Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to why hiking in the USA and Europe is so different. With this, I mean, it's probably quite hard to generalize because so much of the US is different and so much of Europe is different. You can go to Northern Europe and Scandinavia and be hiking in the snow and in the snowy regions, or you can go to the Alps, snowy regions in the mountains. You can go to England, be pretty flat, but I'd say pretty beautiful lands, and just different regions. Eastern Europe's got its own aspects. I know there's a lot of mountainous regions there as well, but yeah, just throughout Europe you're gonna have different things, and the same with the US. So this might be a bit of a generalization because I don't think you can just sort of base it off one place, but we're gonna see anyway. And I mean, I'm sure it'll be a good video just showing the landscapes of the two areas, the US and Europe. But yeah, let's check this out. Hopefully you're going to enjoy, and let's jump into this.
Been hiking in a different country, or wanted to? Maybe the Alps, the Rockies, the Andes, or the Himalayas. You quickly realize not all trail experiences are the same. Land access, hiking culture, landscapes, wildlife, navigation, supply points, gear. Everything is just a little different depending on the country you're in. Let's dive more specifically into how hiking in the United States differs from hiking in Europe.
They're almost too nice.
That attitude was so foreign to us as Americans.
In addition to outdoor videos like this, Greenbelly also makes ready-to-eat adventure meals.
Secure the bag, baby. Secure the bag.
Europe has many countries with many different cultures and norms. We will broadly focus more on Western Europe, and some on Central and Northern Europe. Both the US and Europe have strong hiking cultures. Alpine summits, reputable outdoor brands, established trail systems.
I actually want to see the brands. I love seeing this sort of stuff. So,
Brands.
in terms of brands that I know, the US is so much more well known. Obviously Columbia. I've literally got Columbia shorts somewhere. North Face. I mean, yeah. Patagonia. Yep. I know all of these a lot more than any of these ones, bar, I can't actually say it, Fjallraven. I know they make pretty popular bags. But yeah, I didn't even know a lot of these were American, to be honest, but the more you know.
Established trail systems, and both mindful of conservation. Their differences start with geography and history. Europe is old. Humans have lived in Europe for over 20,000 years longer than humans have lived in the United States, and have been more densely populated since. These European countries currently have a population density of 419 people per square mile. Compare that to the contiguous United States of 106 people per square mile.
Jeez.
Factoring in Alaska and Hawaii makes that even less. So Europe has more people per square mile. It also has less available wilderness, with an estimated 1% of Europe remaining as wilderness.
The forests themselves are going to be younger. Most areas of Europe have been forested, logged, turned into pasture land, or simply used as resources over the years.
A longer history of development has shaped the European hiking experience to often include trails through farms, orchards, and quaint countryside landscapes. In contrast, the United States retains about 5% of its land as wilderness. And since the US is about 3 times the size of Western Europe, it offers substantially more wilderness space, making American hikes more likely to venture into remote, untouched nature.
Wild fields and forests, wide open spaces, and lots of freedom. Untamed wilderness field.
Landscape. Europe boasts the majestic Alps, stretching across France, Switzerland, Italy, Germany, and Austria, offering breathtaking peaks, lush alpine meadows, and trails like the Tour du Mont Blanc. And the Pyrenees between France and Spain, known for iconic historical trails like the Camino de Santiago. The Scottish Highlands, famous for their lochs and lush green rolling hills.
I can vouch, it's beautiful here. As a Scotland hater myself, you know, England and Scotland, it's a bit of friendly banter. I don't actually have any issue with Scotland, but no, Scotland in terms of the landscape is the best in the UK for sure.
In Germany, there's the dense Black Forest, and down in the Mediterranean, the coast provides picturesque scenery. When it comes to history, Europe shines, with over 100,000 castles and 500,000 churches, synagogues, temples, and mosques. While hiking through the countryside, you're likely to encounter numerous historical relics, such as one of these medieval churches, enchanting castles, or ancient stone bridges. providing a unique combination of cultural history and natural beauty.
The hiking trails always go past old watchtowers or near castles.
I see monasteries like crazy. A lot of stone stuff that's just out there in the landscape and has been for 500 years.
That's the fun thing about Europe. You see a variety of cultures and constructions. You see these people that they seem to be like their families are there for generations.
There's more of a cultural element to it. You'll certainly see the historical aspect as well. Many monuments, notable sites, because Europe just has such a longer human history.
On over to the United States. The US has the Rockies with stunning peaks and trails like the Colorado Trail. The Sierra Nevadas with iconic spots like Yosemite and giant old-growth sequoia and redwood forests. The Appalachians with lush forest and streams, and famous trails like the Appalachian Trail. An immense amount of
big
terrain
trail.
variety, from deserts in the Grand Canyon in the southwest, to swamps like the Everglades in the southeast, to extensive coastal trails. When it comes to biodiversity, the US shines.
For sure.
The vast wilderness areas, varied terrain, and large size contribute to a rich number of endemic flora and fauna, including large mammals like bison and bears, birds of prey.
I feel like the wildlife would be a lot better as well. Like, I know some parts of Europe you have pretty incredible wildlife as well. I mean, all wildlife's beautiful at the end of the day, but the US, you have the extremes. You actually might come across a bear. You might come across a gator. Like, you're going to experience things that you're not really going to experience in Europe. But look, they both have their pros and cons. The historical side to Europe for sure, like you come across these ruins or whatever it is, and the US for the landscapes. I think the landscapes could be quite comparable, just the diversity of the landscapes in the US. And then the animals, the wildlife. Yeah, it's definitely, they both have their pros. I don't want to say they have their cons, because with hiking, what cons can you really have? To be honest, I think they just both have their pros individually.
Reptiles, and amphibians, making the United States a haven for nature and wildlife enthusiasts.
In Sweden, you'll see reindeer, but they're actually all owned by someone. And in the US, if you see an elk or a deer, it's a wild animal. No one owns that.
Nothing like the US where you have bears, you have wolves, you have coyotes.
What kind of draws me to the hiking in the States is just this open, wide landscapes and like this wilderness that we don't have, just the remoteness and just being out there.
When it comes to accessing the hiking trails, there are notable differences between the United States and Europe. Europe generally has more comprehensive public transportation, making it easier to access trailheads without a car. In contrast, the US, especially in remote areas, having a car is necessary.
So I guess this is where there's a pro and a con, because in the US maybe it's harder to get to these places, but then you're gonna be far away from civilization. Like, you're gonna be on a hike where you're either on your own or with your group of people, and that may be the only they may be the only people that you see. Whereas in Europe, it's probably a lot more, like, I don't want to say commercialized, but if you're getting a train to somewhere, a lot of people will be getting that train to go on that certain hike. So the transportation, obviously, I guess, is better in Europe for that, but then maybe the experiences that you're actually having on the hikes, due to there being a lot more people in Europe, may also just not make it as enjoyable. I mean, you're still going to enjoy it, aren't you? But it's just interesting to see the differences in the culture for the hiking as well.
In Switzerland, where I live, the outdoors are so accessible. There's so many gondolas and railways. In the US, you just don't have that. You need to have a car, then you drive out to the trailhead.
Some of the most desired US parks and areas can require more permitting, adding a layer of complexity to planning a trip.
Some parts are so crowded in the US. Every park that I camped on, I needed that permit, and it was way more bureaucratic to take it in comparison to Europe.
Many European countries have freedom to roam laws, which allow for public walking access on private land. For example, German forest law says any forest owner, private or public, has to allow access to their forest for recreational purposes.
Almost all of the land is private, but private with access, generally open for people to hike across.
Contrast that with the prevalence of highly privatized land ownership in the US.
In the US, you have a way stronger feeling of property than in Europe. They're strict. You see the signs everywhere. Oh, this is private property. Signs like we shoot on site. I think there's okay, I'm definitely not even taking a peek inside of their land. In Europe, people seem to be more lax about it.
And let's not forget navigating with the imperial system. which can be confusing to calculate distance compared to the metric system. However, some argue the US is more accessible, largely because Europe has less natural land area available for outdoor recreation, and even in these natural areas, camping is usually not allowed.
Camping is way easier to do in the United States. Like Europe, if you're camping, you're always afraid if you're breaking some rules.
And limited public lands in Europe often lead to overcrowded hiking areas. The United States has seemingly endless outdoor areas across hundreds of millions of acres of remote public lands and forests, where camping is largely permitted.
The amount of public land in parts of the US, like the Western US, is massive. So that makes the atmosphere very conducive to sort of totally free trips where you can do whatever and go out and look for a camp spot.
Hiking culture is different in Europe and America as well. In Europe, shorter nature walks are more integrated into daily life, with less on an emphasis on longer multi-day excursions.
There's a culture of Sunday hiking where the whole town is out in the farms surrounding a town, walking around.
And when there are multi-day hikes, the trip often revolves around a network of huts. A trip might involve hiking for several hours in the day and arriving at a hostel-like hut complete with bunk beds, and a chef making you dinner and then breakfast before heading out again the next morning. This setup leads to a more relaxed and social atmosphere.
The huts have a lot of different impacts on the feel, the experience of a hike. People are eating together, cooking together. You have the pleasure of a roof over your head and comfortable, dry, warm bed, as well as food that can be bought. You don't need a sleeping bag. You don't need a tent. You can travel much lighter.
And Europe is often considered to be better marked with trail signs.
In Europe, the marking of trails is excellent. You'll usually get estimates, often in the amount of time it would take you to reach the next place.
The marking in Europe is generally better. You can hardly get lost.
Compared to the US, hiking is less integrated into daily life and focuses more on planning trips.
The hiking culture, the community, it's extremely strong in the US. People are more focused in like hiking as a sport. Every hiker likes to talk about here, but Americans love to talk about here.
In the US, trips tend to be more primitive, often involving tents and self-sufficiency. There's a stronger emphasis on having the right gear for the journey, with hikers carefully selecting equipment tailored to their specific trip. Because, well, you probably aren't going to be near a hut system or a town.
I really like camping because I think when I'm going into the mountains, I kind of want to get away from people and have my own space.
Trail markings vary in the US depending on the trail, but you can probably expect more primitive trail markings like cairns on less popular trails.
America, you'll have more feeling of discovery. If you're not in the really popular trail, you can be alone for several days, and it takes days to reach a town.
There's no one here beside me.
Through hiking culture as well, where you cover long distances for extended periods of time, is more ingrained in the United States, with trails like the AT, PCT, and CDT.
The thru hiking culture was pretty much established in the United States. It's much more independent in Europe, so you don't establish this kind of trail culture where you know that people that are out there.
It's clear that hiking experiences in the United States and Europe are different. Europe boasts a rich history with charming countryside landscapes, and the United States boasts vast remote wilderness areas with an impressive amount of biodiversity. Both regions offer superb opportunities for great hiking, just a matter of preference.
We had some German colleagues come to the US and went on a hike to a waterfall, and they complained because there was no restaurant serving ice cream and coffee.
They said, we did this big long hike. Where was the ice cream? Where was the beer? That attitude was so foreign to us as Americans who think, yeah, of course you don't put a restaurant in the middle of a beautiful hike. The hike is supposed to take you away from
It's quite funny because the US is seen as like a commercialized country, but then when it comes to hiking, it's like the Europeans want to have all these things that I don't want to say it's more commercialized, but it brings more people to these places, which I think in its own way is a commercialized way to do stuff, like having cafes and all these different things, bars, etc. So it is quite fascinating how it sort of like roles are reversed of this, where like in the US it seems like you are genuinely just within nature. Don't get me wrong, I feel like in Europe you're probably going to have places where you are still fully within the nature, but just I guess the culture around it. If there's a bar 5 miles that way, you're going to hike to the bar or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, that's sort of what I'm taking from this.
I think there's certain people who love the European approach more and others who love the US approach more. I like it either way. It doesn't have to be this one's better and this one's worse. It really can just be different.
Have you hiked in both regions? Let us know your experience.
Well, there you go. This is a pretty cool little look into this. I'm not someone who knows that much about hiking, but yeah, it was a cool little reaction. I enjoyed this. Hopefully you did as well. I guess if you're someone who has hiked in both places, let me know your experiences and what you enjoyed more. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Until next time, I subscribe and peace.